With Red Bull coming under an unprecedented level of competition from the likes of McLaren and Mercedes this season, let alone in the entire ground effect era, the team have decided to bring their biggest upgrade package of the season to the Hungaroring for this weekend. And with it comes a visually striking change across the entire RB20, but only on Max Verstappen's car for the weekend. And one other note when it comes to this package is only going to be used across certain weekends, which have slow to medium speed corners. So when we're talking about this package and where it will be used, it's going to be used obviously at the Hungarian Grand Prix, it will be used at the Singapore Grand Prix, and a couple other tracks as well throughout the remainder of the season. And the RB20 will revert to its previous spec for all the other racetracks. Now, having said that, let's jump right in and dissect all of the changes because there are a huge amount of them. And to begin with, let's start with the most visually striking one, which is of course the removal of the Mercedes W14 inspired shoulder gullies on the RB20. For this weekend, they have been removed and we can see there is a much more streamlined engine cover and Coke bottle now introduced to the RB20. Now this is of course going to help aid in the huge amounts of volumes in terms of airflow making its way towards the rear end of the car and of course to the main important parts of the rear end, which is the top of the diffuser and of course across all the rear wing and the beam wing and all of those sorts of structures. And what this should do across these particular tracks where they have slow and medium speed corners, it's going to enable the RB20 through Max Verstappen's hands and to a lesser degree Perez's to generate more excessive levels of downforce and of course peak downforce levels and load. And so this is like a track specific upgrade, much in the same way Formula 1 outfits interchange the front and rear rings depending on the level of track. So for example, this weekend you have like maximum levels of downforce on the car because you just need it. Whereas the following weekend at Spa, you're going to have completely different front and rear ring levels in terms of the amount of downforce produced, but of course drag. Because around Spa, with a lot of long straights and just high speed corners, you need to find a perfect balance between the downforce and drag levels. And so as such, you will not see the Monaco level of downforce at which we are having for this weekend. So this is what this whole package is aimed at improving, particularly when we're talking about the engine cover and Coke bottle region. Now of course, moving away from that, there is other areas of striking differences, and that's to do with the Sidepods. Now for the RB20 this weekend, the Sidepods have undergone quite a different level of reprofiling for them. And what they've enabled here is a much more kind of deeper water slide on the RB20. And not only that, the actual shoulder of the Sidepod has been extended in terms of the height for a much longer level across the Sidepod. So you see where the Oracle logo is kind of placed across the Sidepod. It doesn't drop away as dramatically on the previous specification of Sidepod. And there's a great illustration up on the screen now for you all to see what I'm currently speaking about. Red Bull have also made modifications or changes to the floor edge on their RB20, having introduced a vertical flow diverter, which for the first time appears on their floor. Now this of course is very much self-explanatory in terms of what it does, as the name does imply that very thing. It's basically a flow diverter from which they will divert flow of the airflow to go either side of it. So basically what you can see here is this is going to, hopefully for their sake and what they're trying to achieve from what I have a general understanding of, is that it's going to divert the flow of air either side of the rear wheels. So it's going to go outboard of the rear wheel and also inboard of the rear wheel to the back of the diffuser. So it should help with that particular point of interest. Now, of course, with such substantial changes happening in the kind of midpoint of the Formula One vehicle, changes also have to have taken place and occurred upstream, and that of course would mean changes on the front wing and of course on the front suspension, and Red Bull have done exactly that. Now let's start with the front wing. So Red Bull have made revisions to all 4 elements of their front wing by reprofiling them to extract more load without affecting the flow stability from that particular change. And not only has the elements on the front wing changed, but also the nose itself. The nose tip is now much more rounded than its predecessor across all the other Formula One race weekends, and the wing scoop has been slightly profiled with outboard angle adjusters. Now, of course, this is all to do with making sure the interactions in terms of the airflow from the front wing and being directed further through the RB20 is happening in an extremely harmonious manner. So the changes have been created with a lot of thought and emphasis placed on what is being changed further down the vehicle, and of course I'm talking about the Sidepods and engine cover. And of course the same can be said of the front suspension, and in particular the lower wishbone shroud has had a small reprofiling to help improve higher pressure downstream. Now of course, as it comes with all upgrade packages across the ground effect era ever since 2022, there is always a little bit of trepidation that comes with such a huge upgrade. And Max Verstappen has spoken about this in the press yesterday himself. And it's of course to do with the correlation between the virtual world and the real world, and making sure what you're seeing in the data in the virtual world actually is going to be happening in the real world. And so Red Bull will be rating with bated breath when they go out for FP1, and probably when this video is live will have already gone out for FP1 and will be in between FP1 and FP2. They'll be hoping that what they've seen in the virtual world has happened on track in the real world, and that the RB20 is performing and has the characteristics and the balance from which they've set the car up for FP1. And if that's taken place, then of course they can be very confident in the fact that they've brought quite a lot of performance, I would suspect, from such an upgrade package as this one. You would hope and suspect that it doesn't have such a huge bearing on the competitiveness of all the other teams that are in competition with the Red Bull outfit. But if everything goes to plan, the team are expecting quite a dramatic improvement in terms of lap time. And of course this comes from the fact of this being such a huge upgrade and it being their biggest one this season thus far. And it could mean that the Formula One grid, as well as all the fans, are in for a very boring weekend if you're not a fan of Red Bull and Max Verstappen. Of course, for all of you Verstappen fans and Red Bull fans watching this right now, you are of course quite naturally excited at the prospect of dominating Formula One again for the foreseeable future. I myself, I would love for it to stay as close and as tight as it's been across the last 4 to 5 Grand Prix weekends, with there being 3, if not 4 Formula One teams in the kind of reckoning for all the high competitive places within qualifying and of course in the race when it comes to the podium positions. I think Formula One needs what's been undertaking within the season thus far to continue in terms of, was it 6 or 7 different winners now this season? We want that to continue, and we want that trend to continue, where we don't know what's going to happen when we turn up at a race weekend from weekend in and weekend out. I think domination in the sport is incredibly boring. I think, as we all can say, no matter if you're a fan of a certain team or just a fan of the sport like I myself am, regardless of the fact of there being a Ferrari flag in the background. That's just there because it's the only piece of kind of F1 memorabilia, if you want to call it that I have, and it just looks better than having a blank wall or the pictures on books that I have underneath of it. So I hope that the package is not as huge a leap forward as the team are hoping that it is. So right guys, I'm going to wrap up the video there. I hope you've all enjoyed it. If you have, of course, do leave a like on the video. Share it across all your socials. If you do, that would greatly help not only myself but the reach of the channel as I look to grow it to 10,000 subscribers before the end of the season. And I will obviously, if you're new to the channel and you've enjoyed the content, please do subscribe and turn on notifications for all future videos on here. Right guys, I will catch you all with another Formula 1 video very shortly.